One of the features that I enjoy most of all at this time of year is the multitude and variety of lights that are put up in gardens and houses and streets and public buildings to welcome the Christmas season. There are many houses lit up, but some are simply extraordinary, the lengths to which they go. And there is one out on the Cooley Peninsula near where I live that has every square inch of the garden and the house covered with lights. Really extraordinary effort. But I must say that it's something which always gives me a lift every time I pass by it. The lights never fail to brighten the gloominess of the Irish winter and to emanate a warmth and a glow that lifts the person's spirit and helps us to forget the short days and the cold weather. Now, light is a very powerful factor, a very powerful element in the teaching and liturgical practice of the Church. The reason that we put such emphasis on light is that it is such a powerful symbol for Jesus and his effect, the effect of his teaching on our world. There is an awful lot of darkness around us, so we need to be reminded from time to time that the light of Christ is still burning, is still shining, no matter how weak that flame may be. Now, the constant reminder of Christ's light is very important for us because the often dominant darkness of our world can sometimes get us down, can leave us cynical, can leave us devoid of hope. Now, Jesus himself was born into very dark times, into times of unrest and upheaval. Unfortunately, the times in which we live are remarkably similar to the era in history that Jesus lived in. The powers of evil and darkness are still rampant in our world. The wars in Palestine and Ukraine in particular have reached new lows, and they seem to rage on without any respect whatsoever for human life. In fact, it seems that civilians are targeted with callous brutality for maximum effect. Poverty, famine, and deprivation are still commonplace across the globe, as less than 5% of the population controls over 90% of the wealth. Along with that, we continue to recklessly exploit the natural resources of the earth, and the environment doesn't get the protection it needs to renew and to cleanse itself as it should. And as we contemplate the misery and misfortune that shrouds our world on this Christmas morning, it might be very hard for us to believe that Jesus Christ has conquered sin and death, but he has. The birth of this hope and this faith is what we actually celebrate at Christmas. And in many ways, it is appropriate that we do it during midwinter, when all around us, nature is at its lowest ebb. Christmas always tends to bring a spark of hope, a glimpse of something better into the lives of many people. Even though there may be many reasons for sadness, for anxiety, and even, unfortunately, for some people, reasons for despair. Like the lights on the trees and the houses, this feast cuts through the darkness and points to what can be and will be in the future. Because we celebrate at Christmas the fact that God became a man, we can say with confidence that God is no longer a stranger to us. Jesus may have walked among us for just 33 years, but he continues to walk among us today, to live with us, particularly in the Eucharist. Now, we may be somewhat envious of those who actually met Jesus in his short lifetime, but every time we come to a church like this to celebrate Mass, to celebrate the Eucharist, We encounter him as powerfully as the shepherds or the wise men who visited the stable. Because of Jesus' birth, we have been given tremendous access to God. We should never, ever take that for granted. And this is why we are sitting here in this church this Christmas morning, 2023 years after the event. That is why we continue to hope when all seems to be despair. That is why we have joy in our hearts, even when we are sad and lonely. God became one of us. And what is more, in the Blessed Sacrament that we receive at Mass, he continues to become one of us and to live with each one of us in the messy circumstances of our lives. And that's so important to remember. God does not expect us to be perfect in order to be with us. None of us are perfect. We all have messy circumstances in our lives. And this is the message of Christmas, that God comes to us regardless, that he comes to heal us. And so often people have an attitude about church that it's all about rules and regulations, that you have to be almost perfect before you come into the church. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. This feast celebrates the fact that Jesus becomes one of us and that he comes to heal us, to give us life, to give us light, to help us to become perfect. But we have to come to know him first. We have to enter into a relationship with him in order to know that and to understand that. And it is through the church that we enter into that relationship with Jesus Christ, who is present to us in the sacraments. To finish, I want to quote from John Betjeman's poem, Christmas, as the poet seeks to understand fully the incredible event that we celebrate on this day. And is it true, and is it true, the most tremendous tale of all, seen in a stained glass window's view, a baby in an ox's stall, the maker of the stars and sea, become a child on earth for me? And is it true? For if it is, no love that in a family dwells, no caroling in frosty air, nor all the steeple-shaking bells can with this single truth compare, that God was man in Palestine and lives today in bread and wine.